So in this video, I'm going to talk about the internet, why it's so important, and why really you should take this course. And so the overarching theme here is that there are some people who would argue in the past 20 or 30 years, the most important invention of our generation is the internet in terms of what it's accomplished, how it has transformed the world, the economy, politics, and society. And by understanding how it works, understanding how it's been built, what it can do, what it can't do, you'll have a much greater understanding about this tremendous engine of change. So let's just take a few simple societal examples. So, today we think if you think in terms of economics and the economic changes the internet has brought, think about things like Black Friday. So Black Friday was it's the day after Thanksgiving in the United States, when it's given that name because all of the stores go from the red, that is, they've lost money over the year, to the black, because so much is bought for Christmas. And so this is historically this time of tremendous sales and tremendous purchasing. People get up early to go to the mall, all of that. But today, Black Friday is still, of course, important. But now there's Cyber Monday, when people, after the Thanksgiving holiday, the next Monday, log in online to buy gifts for the holidays. In the sense of it's the ability for people to buy things online so easily has really changed our purchasing patterns. Enough so that now there's legislation in the United States, in the legislature, to examine whether or not it's fair that these online vendors don't have to pay, the people who buy things from online vendors don't have to pay sales tax, whereas brick and mortar vendors, people do have to pay sales tax. So suddenly places like Amazon have a price benefit that they can give a better price because people don't have to pay taxes on things which are bought from Amazon. So there's been lots of legislation about trying to control this, and is it unfair to brick and mortar? But the fact that the presence of online purchasing is leading to legislation because of concerns of competition says something about the economic effect that the internet's having. Or you look at something far more personal, such as dating. So before the internet, how do you meet people? Well, through friends. Maybe there's classified ads in the newspaper, or you go to a bar or try to meet people that way. Today, there are all these services, OkCupid, Match.com, for connecting people online. So it's changing how people meet each other and how people date. And as some of these sites will claim that some significant fraction of the people who meet on their sites eventually become married. Think in terms of knowledge. So before, if you wanted to read a book, you would go to the library and you'd check it out. Today, things like Google Books, where there are millions of books that have been scanned in and anyone can read at any time. Things like ebooks delivered over these wireless networks like the WhisperNet, or Wikipedia. You used to, if you wanted to look something up, you used to have to go to an encyclopedia. If you were very lucky, maybe you had an old encyclopedia at home, but usually you'd go to the library. Now, anytime you want to know something about something that's not too obscure, you can go to Wikipedia and learn something about it. Finally, communication. So, there are beginning sort of IRC chat programs on the internet, but think about before we had instant messaging or voice over IP or video telephony. Video conferencing was this technology of the future. The idea you could have a video call. And really it was the internet and just this cheap, inexpensive, always-on, omnipresent data communication system is what made that possible. It's really changed how we interact with people on a day-to-day basis when it's available. So that's just society, how we interact with one another and the fabric of interpersonal relationships. There's also been significant political change brought by the internet. So you look at something like the Arab Spring, where people who are revolting against the government are coordinating using SMS or Twitter. So there's actually a story where during the revolution in Iran, that Twitter was planning on taking its servers down for the weekend for an upgrade. And the United States State Department called up Twitter and said, "We're sorry, there's a revolution or an uprising going on, and they're using Twitter a lot. Please keep your servers online." So political change in the world is greatly affected by these technologies we're seeing deployed on the internet. Or think in terms of diplomacy, or the recent WikiLeaks about all of these United States diplomatic cables and how that affects diplomatic relations throughout the world. A tremendous effect that would have been sort of inconceivable before the very, very rapid spread of information which the internet makes available. Or you look within, say, the United States, the Occupy movement, Occupy Wall Street, Occupy Oakland, organized through Twitter and through Facebook, these online social media for which the internet is their backbone. Finally, you also see politics not only in terms of uprisings and diplomacy, but also in terms of politics by force. So one example of this is the Stuxnet worm, which was an internet-capable worm that shut down the centrifuges in Iran, damaged the centrifuges that were being thought to be enriching nuclear material. So this is an example of what looks like a state, a government, producing essentially a cyber weapon, which is intended to spread over an internet-style network designed very specifically to sabotage these devices at this location. So this is the internet used not only for personal connections, personal interactions, as well as organization, but also even for political changes by force. Now, in terms of the scope of these economic changes, so this is recently, I went just on April 16th, so a couple months ago, and I looked up who are the 100 richest people in the world, so the top billionaires list from Forbes. And if you look, number 24 is Sergey Brin and Larry Page, co-founders of Google. Number 26, Jeff Bezos, CEO of Amazon. Number 35 at the time was Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Facebook. So these are all people whose billions have been made by new services, applications, and uses of the internet. And so just think about sort of the amount of shift of capital and shift of economics and economic models that the internet is bringing that, gosh, in the past decade or so, you're seeing some of the richest people in the world have achieved that through effectively the use and growth of the internet. And I think this points at a more broader point about technology and what's happening today. So I would argue that we're in the midst of second, or depending on what count, second or third industrial revolution. This idea of this tremendous upheaval of how we conduct business, how we produce goods, in terms of trade, in terms of the kinds of skills that are necessary for modern industries. And so this is some data I collected from, this is United States data only, from the United States Department of Labor and Department of Education. And so what it shows is for 4 sort of scientific engineering degrees, the number of degrees granted in the United States each year, and then the number of job openings projected over the next 10 years. So this data for the job openings is projected 2008 to 2018 from the U.S. Department of Labor, and the actual degrees are 2008 data from the United States Department of Education. And so if you want some details about how I got this data, there's this URL down here. But the basic point here is that you can see that in most disciplines, there are fewer jobs than there are degrees, and that's normal because not everyone who gets an engineering degree, say, goes into engineering. They can do other things with that degree. But there's this tremendous discrepancy for computer science, that the number of degrees which at least the United States is producing each year in computer science is only a small fraction, effectively a third of the number of job openings. And so there's tremendous economic growth in this area, which we educationally, in terms of society, have not yet caught up with. And then so learning about these kinds of things, learning about the internet, because it's such a core aspect of this, is something which is of tremendous practical value in the job market. It's important in our everyday society. In fact, if you were to pull apart those 160,000 or so jobs per year that are appearing in the United States, in fact, there a lot of them are software engineers, as you might think people who are writing software. A lot of them are, say, database administrators. But if you look, there are a bunch of very large categories here. Network and computer systems administrators, people who are administering computer systems and networks. People who are analyzing data communication systems and network systems. And so the point being that actually there's a significant, almost a quarter of the computer science jobs each year, so 40,000 jobs a year approximately, have to do with computer networks. Which is not to say that even these software engineering jobs, many of them have to do with computer networks as well. You're building a new web application, new web service. This all involves the use of networks and the internet. So correspondingly, understanding how the internet works, understanding the design principles of networks, how they work, why they're built this way, good design principles for building future networks, future network applications, future network systems, is of tremendous value going forward in terms of not only as a practical skill, but also to understand what is becoming a tremendous linchpin of modern society. And so this course is going to teach you exactly that. It's going to teach you how computer networks work, not only their implementation is an example of a very successful on the internet, but also the design principles that lead you there. So as the internet evolves, as it does every day, you'll understand the principles that lead that evolution, that guide that evolution, such that even if we use slightly different protocols in 5 years, you'll still be able to understand them because you'll understand the principles behind network design. And so in theory, right, or the hope would be that if you take this course, you not only understand the internet of today, but you'll also have the intellectual tools to understand the internet of tomorrow as it evolves towards that. And it's also going to give you a background of what are the forces that shape the internet. So it's a technological marvel and an amazing feat of engineering, but what makes it especially interesting, at least to me, is that it's shaped not only by engineering concerns, but also by real-world economic, political, and societal concerns. Like you read about how the internet is being used in politics, or its effects on the Arab Spring, or the Stuxnet worm, or its effect on economies as to whether or not how internet commerce is going to be regulated or governed. You read about things like offshore gambling and how that's managed. All of these kinds of questions affect legislation, affect how the internet is developed, affect how it's governed, and that has tremendous implications on its design. And so it's this interesting interface and mix between not only deep technical concepts, but also the societal needs and the societal wants and societal rules that we use to use those concepts and basically make a better world for the future through data communication. So that's the basic overview. The internet is astoundingly important. It's going to become only more important as time goes on. And so understanding it is a very, very valuable thing. And so I encourage you to do so and take this course.